It was March 29th, 1982, a cold, wet Monday at Leicester racecourse, the type of day destined to be forgotten by everyone, except it never was. A small field of untested 2-year-olds lined up for a modest 5-furlong sprint. Among them, a grey colt named Flockton Grey, a horse so ordinary he barely made the race card interesting. No one in the stands, not even his jockey Kevin Darley, expected history. When the starter's flag dropped, the unknown Grey shot from the gate as if chased by lightning. Within seconds, he was lengths ahead, then 10, then 20. The crowd gasped. Commentators stumbled for words. A debutante from a backyard Yorkshire yard had just obliterated the field by 20 lengths. That single race would ignite an investigation that shook British horse racing, destroyed reputations, and revealed one of the most audacious sporting scams ever attempted. Flockton Grey was trained by Stephen Wiles, a struggling 30-something former jump jockey who operated out of Langley Holmes stables between Wakefield and Huddersfield. His small yard was filled with cheap claimers, the sort that could barely win a raffle, let alone a race. The horse's owner, Ken Richardson, was no gentleman breeder. He was a scrap metal dealer turned gambler, clever, secretive, and with a taste for risk. He'd bought Flockton Grey, a Dragonara Palace colt, for just 1,700 guineas. Nothing about the horse screamed winner. Yet across Yorkshire that March afternoon, whispers spread. Money was pouring in for the Grey outsider. Some claimed up to £200,000 had been staked, cleverly distributed across dozens of betting shops. Trainer Pat Haslam placed £250 each way on Richardson's behalf. Another trainer, Mick Easterby, joined in. The odds held at 10-1. When the horse cruised home by 20 lengths, the bookmakers froze. Something wasn't right. 2 days later, the Jockey Club launched an inquiry. George Edmondson, an investigator with Racecourse Security Services, arrived at Wiles's yard on March 31st. He found a grey 2-year-old, but not the one that had triumphed at Leicester. A blood test confirmed that this horse was indeed by Dragonara Palace out of Mississippi, the breeding of Flockton Grey, but crucially, he bore no scar on his right foreleg. The horse described in the passport did. When questioned, Wiles claimed the real Flockton Grey was at Jubilee Farm, 70 miles away, owned by Ken Richardson. Edmondson drove there, but the horse was gone, vanished. Meanwhile, a series of crucial oversights had allowed the deception to slip through. At Leicester, race vets had checked the passport, but never examined the horse's teeth, the surest indicator of age, nor had they looked beneath the bandages covering its legs. Then Edmondson caught a break. 7 race photographs from the track's official photographer, Ken Bright. In one frame, the winner had its mouth open. Experts John Hickman and Douglas Witherington studied the enlarged image. Their conclusion, the horse was a 3-year-old, not a 2-year-old. The investigation now focused on one question: who was this older Grey? They scoured thousands of naming forms, searching for a 3-year-old Grey gelding with a scar on his off-fore leg. 3 matches surfaced, and 2 were quickly ruled out. The last name remained: Good Hand. Good Hand had begun life in 1979 at the Tinkler family's stable in Yorkshire. As a foal, he'd injured his leg on a gate, leaving that same unmistakable scar. He'd raced 3 times in 1981, once favoured, finishing 3rd before being sold on to none other than Ken Richardson's associate, Colin Matheson. Matheson paid £3,100 and sent Good Hand to Richardson's Jubilee Farm. There, both horses, the young, slow Flockton Grey and the older, proven Good Hand, stood side by side. By late 1981, Richardson allegedly arranged for Wiles to take Good Hand away with a view to selling him. What happened next reads like a noir caper. On January 5, 1982, veterinary surgeon Philip Dixon was asked to complete a naming form for a Grey, brought to Wiles's yard by Peter Boddy, Richardson's horsebox driver. Dixon marked down a scar on the foreleg, noted its features, but never checked its teeth. And crucially, the paperwork listed the colt as born in 1980, making him appear a 2-year-old. That document, the fraudulent passport, would later become the linchpin of the case. By January's end, Weatherby's issued a passport for Flockton Grey, bearing Good Hand's markings but a false birth year. When Matheson told Wiles to enter the horse for Leicester, Wiles was confused. The small Grey in his yard was absolutely useless, he'd later say, but he followed orders. The real ringer arrived quietly before race day. On Sunday, March 28th, Body collected the grey. He claimed it was a favour. The Wiles' lorry had broken down. He drove to Newmarket, stopped at Pat Haslam's yard to deliver another horse, then parked overnight at the Moat House Hotel. Richardson himself was there too, calling Darley, the jockey, with advice on where the best ground was at Leicester. The next morning, Body drove to the racecourse. The ringer was ready. That afternoon, Flockton Grey, or rather Good Hand, thundered to victory. Richardson won big, and then everything unravelled. After Edmondson's inspection, Wiles and his father drove 70 miles to confront Richardson and Matheson. They wanted answers. Where was the real Flockton Grey? Matheson barely opened the door. He admitted to betting £600 each way on the horse, winning £7,000, but denied everything else. Weeks passed, then months. The ringer Good Hand was still missing. Until December 1982, when an anonymous call led reporters from the Daily Star to a remote field near Beggars Bridge on the North Yorkshire moors. There, they found two horses. One was a grey with a scar on its off-fore leg. Blood tests proved with 97% certainty it was Good Hand, but the mystery deepened. How had he ended up there? The field was leased by Sylvia Jones, a local woman who claimed someone had simply left the horse for her after she'd mentioned wanting a companion for her foal. She said she didn't know the owner. When police arrived, she proved a reluctant witness, even offering a huntsman £200 to shoot the horse. The judge later called her story incredible and untrue. Yet no direct link to Richardson was ever found. The police had the horse, the paperwork, the bets, and the motive, but they still needed to prove who had orchestrated the switch. All roads led back to Ken Richardson, and so the case of Flockton Grey moved from the stables and the moors to the courtroom. The trial, May 1984, York Crown Court. 3 men sat in the dock: Ken Richardson, Colin Matheson, and Peter Body, all accused of conspiring to substitute Good Hand for Flockton Grey, defrauding bookmakers of thousands. Judge Harry Bennett, QC, opened proceedings with words that would echo through racing history. Members of the jury, I am sure that you must have found in this case, as I have, that it is both curious and fascinating. And you may have thought more than once, well, this would make a very good book, a very good detective story. And indeed it was. Prosecutor Geoffrey Rivlin, QC, painted Richardson as the puppeteer, a gambler with a network of insiders and a plan for profit. The case, he said, hinged on deception, a forged passport, a swapped horse, and a trail of bets scattered across Yorkshire. Richardson's defense was led by the formidable George Carman, QC, already famous for his wit and devastating cross-examinations. Carman argued that Richardson had simply placed bets, nothing more, and that the real culprits were the Wiles family, who'd panicked and framed their employer. The Wileses admitted they had lied in their initial statements. Out of fear, they said, they knew they'd broken Jockey Club rules by running a horse not stabled with them for the required 14 days, but they swore they'd had no hand in the swap. Corroboration was thin, yet Philip Dixon, the vet who'd marked the horse's scar back in January, became a key witness. His testimony linked the fraudulent paperwork directly to Richardson's circle. When the jury retired, few doubted what they'd decide. By a majority of 10-2, all 3 were found guilty. Richardson received a £20,000 fine, £25,000 in costs, and a 9-month suspended sentence. Matheson paid £3,000. Body got a conditional discharge. Outside, flashbulbs erupted as Richardson insisted he was innocent. 2 years later, the Court of Appeal upheld the verdict. The Jockey Club banned Richardson from racing for 25 years and revoked Wiles's license. But the stubborn scrap metal magnate refused to quit. He filed petitions, letters, and new evidence, determined to prove that the winning horse wasn't Good Hand at all. By 1995, Home Secretary Michael Howard agreed to a fresh review. The appeal reached the Court of Appeal again in 1996. 14 years after the race. Richardson's new experts, Dennis Bellamy and Dr. Alfred Linney, used computer analysis on race photographs. They claimed subtle differences in facial whorls and head shape proved the winner was a different horse. But the Crown's imagery analyst, Michael Harrow, demolished the theory, pointing out flaws in the photo quality and measurement. The judges agreed. Lord Justice Rose concluded, "Any other conclusion means that somewhere, untraced, is another 3-year-old grey gelding with a scar on its right foreleg. Such a conclusion beggars belief. The convictions stood. Case closed. What became of the cast of this extraordinary story? Ken Richardson, banned from the sport he'd exploited, turned his schemes elsewhere. He bought football clubs, Bridlington Town, then Doncaster Rovers. When Doncaster's main stand burned down in 1995, investigators discovered he'd hired an ex-SAS man to torch it for insurance. In 1999, Richardson, then 61, was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Stephen and Elaine Wiles faced their own reckoning. In 1986, Stephen was banned for 5 years for entering a horse not in his care. Later, they returned quietly to racing's fringes, training point-to-pointers and working in other yards. As for the horses, both Flockton Grey and Good Hand were impounded for years as living evidence. When finally released in 1986, Flockton Grey was sold at Wetherby Sales for 680 guineas. He never raced again, living out his days under the care of Sharon Dick, the horse that never ran but changed racing forever. Good Hand returned to stud and faded from record, the ringer who ran too well. The Flockton Grey affair forced horse racing to confront its own vulnerabilities. Veterinary checks were tightened, microchipping and photographic IDs became mandatory. The days of ringers slipping through the system were over. Yet one question still lingers: who actually trained the ringer between January and March 1982? Rumors pointed to several trainers. One even returned his winnings quietly to a bookmaker. Others whispered the horse had been prepared abroad. But proof never surfaced. As Ashforth himself wrote, maybe, when some of the few who know are old men, the answer will emerge. Ultimately, the Flockton Grey saga isn't just about fraud. It's about human arrogance, the belief that cleverness can outpace consequence. A horse switched, a nation deceived, and a sport forever changed. This was Flockton Grey, the horse that never was. A reminder that even when a lie crosses the finish line first, the truth eventually catches up.